All right, number 13. This is a big one. So if you are planning on working alongside me as we go through this problem, get your finger ready for that pause button. I don't want you to have any of your work or answers spoiled for you. So, get ready to pause it. Second, use a calculator. We're doing a lot of big numbers and calculations. Please use one. And with that, let's get going. So letter A, it says, what was the range of the jumps in each year? What does this tell you about the frog jumps? Well, remember how you recall the range. You find the range by finding the biggest number and subtracting the smallest number from it. So in the year 2008, our biggest number was 231.5, and the smallest number was 216.5. If you haven't found the range yet, pause it. If not, continue. So when you subtract the two numbers, the difference is 15, so that's our range for 2008. And then conversely, for the year 2009, we have 252, and we're subtracting from it 185.25. So I'm gonna have to do some regrouping. When I subtract and find those two and find the difference, pause it if you haven't already. If not, we'll continue. You would get 66 and 75 hundredths. And now the second part of the question. What does that tell you about the frogs? Well, it makes me think for the year 2008, if the range is only 15, that makes me think, hey, the frogs all jumped pretty close together. You could maybe say or infer that the frogs were more consistent jumpers in this year. Conversely, for the year 2009, it has a range of, goodness, 66 and 75 hundredths. That's like, a little over 4 times bigger than the year 2008. That would just make me think, hey, these frogs were less consistent. It would also probably make me think, hey, there's probably some outliers. And if you're looking at the histogram, there's an outlier above somewhere between 250 and 260. We know it's that number right there. And there's also an outlier between 180 and 190. We know it's that number right there. All right, moving on. What was the typical jump length of the frogs each year? How did you find this value? So, we already know what the mean and the median are from the last problem, if you just did it, or if you were just looking at it. But if you haven't, either way, you still want to figure it out. So this is when a calculator becomes super duper helpful. So I'm going to start with the mean. And remember, you find the mean just by adding up all the values and dividing by how many numbers there are. Pause it if you are going to work on it. If you've already done it, then go ahead and proceed. So when I add up all of my numbers, I get the sum of 1,793. I'm then going to divide it by how many numbers there are. In this case, there are 8. And when I do that, I get the quotient of 224 and 125 thousandths. So that's like, a typical jump for the year 2008. And that makes sense. It's somewhere between 220 and 230. Now the mean is the middle number. So thankfully, these are already organized in greatest to least or least to greatest, depending on how you're looking at it. So I'm going to find the middle number by crossing out my high and my low, and I come to arrive at two numbers. Two frogs, I should say, RG and the well ain't dry. So when you have two numbers, what you have to do is find the average or the middle of those two numbers. So I'm going to add up those two numbers and divide by 2. When I add them together, I get the sum of 448 and 5/10. When I divide by 2, I get 224 and 25 hundredths. So if you're comparing the year 2008, the mean and the median are about the same. They're very close to each other. Now repeat the process for the year 2009. The mean, I'm going to add them all up and then divide by how many numbers there are. Pause it if you haven't yet done it. If not, go ahead. So I get 1,875 hundredths. I divide it by 8. And I get this crazy number, 225. And I don't even know what tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths? Goodness. I don't even think I can say it. Okay, moving on. That's our mean. The median is the middle number again, crossing out my high and my low, and my high and my low, until I get to my middle two numbers, and I'm going to once again have to add them together and divide by 2. Pause it if you haven't found the answer yet. So I got 450, and then when I divided by 2, I got 225. All right, so we found the mean and the median for each of the years. And they're about the same. They're pretty close, which is kind of interesting. So this mean is 225 and a crazy decimal. This mean is 224 and change. The median is 224 and change for 2008. And the median is 225 for the year 2009.